Good morning, everybody. All right. My name is Mark Pond. We're going to talk a little bit about First Lego League robotics. Good to see all of you. How many people here are first-time coaches? Okay. It's good to see you. Now, this was, as you can see, this was a tournament several years ago. Had 5 kids on the team. Starting from our right, that's Elizabeth there. She was what we called field. It was her job to make sure the robot, if the robot got stuck out in the field, she would bring it back, which fortunately didn't happen this day. It was also her responsibility to make sure the mission models were all set up properly, which on more than one occasion she had to do because sometimes they're not quite right. And she saved some points for us by making sure the mission models were set right. And right there, as you watch her, I can tell by the look on her face, she's adding up the score as we go. Next to her is Sage. Sage was one of our drivers. We had 2 drivers. It was their job to put the robot in proper starting position, select the program on the brick, and get the robot started. Then they would tag off to Gina. Gina's the happy one in the middle there. She was engineering removals. It was her job to take the robot back, take off any attachments that we didn't need anymore, and take any parts that the robot had brought back from the mission models. She would then tag off to Tori on the far left. Tori was engineering attachments. She would put the next attachments needed for the next mission on the robot. That was her job. She would then tag off to the driver, who would start the whole process over again. Now, as you can tell from this picture, it's working. Tell by the looks on their faces. Now, you see the gentleman back there with the red shirt and his arm held up? He's a coach from another team who's taking pictures of us doing what we're doing that he can use as a teaching tool. Over here, the lady in the kind of white pink sweater, that's a coach from another team watching us. The red-haired lady in the salmon sweater, that's my wife. And this particular day, she did not object at all to having Lego boxes in our house. And standing on our far right, yours truly, doing nothing, saying nothing, doing nothing. All I did that day was drink some coffee, eat some snacks, shake some hands, shoot some breeze, nothing else. Kids did all the work, and it worked out great for us. Okay. I hope every single one of you has a day like this one. First thing you want to do when you get started, you want to register your team. All that can be done online. You get a team number, you register yourself as a coach, you got to go through a background check. But you need to do that. And importantly, you get your email address registered with First Lego League so you can get updates. Read the rules. You will get, when you get your field kit, it comes in a box like those over there. You'll get a rule book. Keep it handy. Read it often. Read the rules. Okay. Make sure your email address has been registered with the team. You want to keep up with the rules. We'll go over that more as we go through this. Your best resource is other coaches. I see some familiar faces out here, but your best resource is other coaches. If you need to know something, I have yet to encounter a First Lego League coach who wouldn't try to be helpful. Get some parents involved. You only have 2 hands. You might need a parent maybe to do team shirts, maybe to help with the posters for the project, maybe to help with paperwork, maybe to help with snacks at the tournament. But get parental help. Parents are the ones picking up the tab anyway. And then you're going to want to schedule meeting times. I tell people it takes more time than you think it will, and it does. And what happens is if you schedule your meetings early in the school year, the other activities will work around you. The kids have music practice and they have soccer practice and they have whatever they have to do. Kids are busy nowadays. You want to have your schedule on their calendars as soon as possible. After you get registered and get paid, you will get a box like, well, you'll get one of those over there. And you'll end up putting the mission models together. The mission models come, let me see if there's a package here like. You'll get several bags that look like this with numbers on them. These contain all the parts. You'll then need as many hands as you can get to put the mission models together. Usually takes a couple of days to do it, but you need to do it. Make sure it's done right. The instructions are online. You will want to look at the pictures in the rule book. Make sure the mission models are built properly. It's bad if your mission model is not built properly and you spend the entire season working on how to do it, only to get to the tournament and realize that you didn't do it right. Not good. Now you're going to want to build a robot. Now this particular robot, this is one of the old EV3s that was the state of the art a few years ago. Lego is moving on now. They're not supporting this anymore, but the principles are the same. You can go online and find instructions on how to build a robot. I'm not the world's biggest fan of using someone else's directions. Sometimes the directions online are for robots that are more for playing or getting into combat with other robots, things like that. That's not what we're doing. And it keeps the kids from being creative. So let the kids, you might want, obviously you're going to have to coach them a little bit, but let the kids build a robot. Keeping in mind, as Frank Lloyd Wright said, form follows function. If the robot is designed, if you can only do one mission and that involves lifting something and your robot has a lifter, then build it to do that and be happy with it. Okay. I recommend the 4 S's: simple, sturdy, square, and symmetrical. Now, as your team gets better and more experienced, maybe you'll replace the simple with sophisticated, and that's fine. But you want to make sure your kids can handle it. You look at this one, square. The reason I like to see it square is that it makes it easier to go in a straight line or make consistent turns. Symmetrical, same thing. If it's off, if it's not symmetrical, and yes, I know this is not perfectly symmetrical. If it's heavier on one side than on the other, the turns won't be consistent. Sturdy, I think, is pretty obvious why you want one sturdy. And one of the things that happens when people lift the robot, they lift it by the brick over the spike prime by the hub. So attach it on the sides. So when they lift it, it doesn't come off in your hand at the worst possible moment. Then after you build it, you're going to want to figure out how far it'll go on one rotation. You're going to want to do 90-degree tank turn to the right and 90-degree tank turn to the left. Write that down. Those are handy things to have. You will need those as you go through programming for the mission model. Somewhere along in there, read the rules. Make sure that you're building the robot, the specifications, so it'll fit in the launch area. And make sure you're not building it too high. Read the rules. Rich will be going over the rules later, but you're going to want to make sure you're building your robot properly. Consistency. One of the things that kids and some adults like to do is make the robot go as fast as possible. I don't recommend that because speed means it's going to vary off one way or another. I recommend a slower speed and consistency. Now you can use the walls. We'll talk about this a little more as we go, but you can use the walls. If you want to go in a straight line from here to here, roll along the walls. That's why the rollers on the corners. You can roll along here. You're not going to push this forward. It's not going anywhere. You can back up into a wall and square up. and you come off the wall at 90 degrees. You can use the walls to be consistent, but you want to be consistent because if you're not going to be able to do the missions each time. I recommend using the walls to square up, keeping in mind that when you back up, you want to set your motors to back up for time, not for rotations. If you program your robot to back up into a wall and you program it for 3 rotations or whatever it happens to be, and it only takes 2 rotations, the motors are going to freeze up thinking they have to turn another rotation. You're going to be stuck. But if you program it for time, program it for 3 seconds, time will run out and you can go on to the next move. What did you do? It won't.
Did I break it?
Yes. There we go. Okay, you're going to want to come up with a project idea. The innovation project, keeping in mind that the innovation project is 1/3 of your score. And I like the kids to get creative. Kids have creative minds. They can come up with all kinds of stuff. Anybody who's a parent can tell you your kid will come up with all kinds of crazy stuff. That's a good idea. Sometimes things that sound a little crazy and outlandish turn out to be good project ideas. And keep it simple on the props. Don't go overboard building props. It can be a distraction to the judges and the kids. Keep it simple. Now, again, as you get more sophisticated and the kids get a little older, maybe you can handle more, but in the beginning, keep it simple. And I recommend getting out of the classroom on the project. Find some good ideas, get out of, it's good for you, it's good for them, get a different environment. We'll get back to the project in a moment, but when you're building your robot, this is a robot that someone built that I took apart last year after the tournament. One of the things that happened, that's just a robot, that's no attachments, that's just a robot. All those pieces, there are a couple 100 pieces up there. One of the things that happens when your robot isn't doing something right, you want it to go over here and do this. When it isn't going over here and do this, the tendency is to start adding pieces on to make it do it. So, well, maybe it'll work if we make this a little longer, or maybe it'll work if we put this on and then put this on. Next thing you know, you've got 15 pieces on there and it's not working right. Sometimes the best thing to do when a robot isn't doing what you want it to do is take some pieces away. Clear it out, start over, start fresh. Now, I said get out of the classroom a minute ago. Take a field trip. This particular trip, we didn't know what we were going to do on our project, but we went out to a particular place and this group of 8th grade girls got to wear hard hats and safety vests, and they got to listen to a presentation from a guy who was a little rough. He's a good guy, but a little rough around the edges. And it was a real experience for them. They came up with a great idea for the project. Get out, have some fun, get some fresh air. And the kids had a ball with this, and we came up with a great idea. One of the most important phases of the season is deciding which missions you're going to do. The kids love to look at the table and say, well, we can do this one, then we can do this one, then we'll go over there and do that one, then we'll do this one, then we'll do this one. And they don't really think about what has to go into deciding which missions you're going to do. Now, you can look at the missions and see that some of them have some similar traits. Maybe some of them require something to be pushed. These are from last year. They require something to be pushed. Or maybe they require something to be carried and dropped. Like into this hopper here, or into around here somewhere, into another hopper somewhere else. And you can use the same attachment to do 2 missions. You get a lot of efficiency out of that. Even if you have to travel across the mat, you think, well, it's going to take time to travel, it's going to take 5 seconds, 6 seconds. Well, okay, it'll take 5 or 6 seconds to get there, but you're not going to have to spend any time changing attachments. Most of the time that gets consumed is not consumed moving from mission to mission. Most of the time that gets consumed and frankly gets wasted is kids trying to attach something or detach something in the launch area when something doesn't go right. That's where your time gets consumed. If you can move accurately from one place to another place, and maybe it takes you 7 or 8 seconds, that's not so bad. Where you waste your time, when matches get lost, is when something's going wrong in the launch area and the kids are sitting there trying to put something together. Keep in mind that the clock doesn't stop. Okay, tell the kids it doesn't matter what happens. You can't call timeout. You can't say do over. You can't say hold it. Tell them if aliens land from Mars, they're not going to stop the clock. Okay. Now, what you want to do when you're practicing and doing meetings is write it down. Kids have a really hard time doing this. They would rather play with the robot and keep doing the stuff, and they don't want to stop and write things down. But you have to insist on that. Make sure that the kids understand. You get a sheet of notebook paper, write down the date, and this is what the mission we worked on. We programmed it to go this far, turn like this, pick this up, put that down, whatever happens to be. Write it down. And when the judges see it at the robot design session, when they see a kid's handwriting on a sheet of loose leaf paper, keeping track of what you're doing, that will help with the judging. Okay? Write it down. Keep track of it. Now, to get from one place to another, doing your missions, you heard me say a little earlier, you can use the walls. Well, I've got another example later. I'll show you when we get into the attachments. But the walls will give you consistency. You can square up against the wall. You can use the wall as a guide. You can use a sensor. The particular one is the ultrasonic sensor, the AV3. I've had good luck with this. You get a good consistent distance pulling away from the wall. Now, the one thing you want to keep in track, I think with the spike prime, they call it a distance sensor now. Make sure that you're far enough away from the wall to get a reading. It sends out a signal from one eye and the other eye reads it. If you're right up against the wall, you're too close and it'll tell you that you're infinitely away from the wall. So if you want to program it for 20 centimeters or 2 inches or whatever, it's going to say, well, we're already infinite distance away. Okay, so then it won't go, it'll freeze here. So if you're pulling away from the wall a certain distance, start it out with half a rotation or a half a second to get away from the wall so it can read its own signal. Then program it for distance. Some people like to use a color sensor as a line follower or 2 color sensors as a line follower. Kind of work. I'm not the biggest fan of that because it's a series of corrections. It's how it reads that line. And it will go this way and this way and this way and this way. If you want it to end up at the end of the line this way, it might end up this way. Not really consistent. The EV3s used a gyro sensor that is complicated, needs to be recalibrated. I'm not a big fan of it. It can be used. Sometimes you can get consistent turns with it. Not great so much, although it does work sometimes for going in a straight line. On the spike prime, it's built in. The only caveat I would put on using the gyro, first, make sure if you're using EV3, it needs to be recalibrated when you use it. Second, make sure the kids can explain the program. There are some programs that will work on the gyro sensor. Make sure the kids can explain it to the judges because the judges will ask. Color sensors as a starter will work well. I've seen teams put a color sensor aimed upwards. And you put a blue panel over it and it starts one program. It goes out, does it, comes back. Then you put a red panel over it, starts another program. Make sure that you calibrate your color sensor in the room. The team that I showed you in the first picture, we practiced in my garage with the garage door open, sunlight. Come in here, it's fluorescent light. Calibrate your color sensor in the room where the tournament takes place. The judges all understand you need to do that. You won't have any problem doing that. Attachments. In large part, the robot is a carrier of attachments. The attachments do the work. Now, this particular attachment here this attachment is simple. No moving parts, no motors, no wires, no nothing. This is the only attachment I've ever used that's worked every single time we tried it. Worked the first time we tried it. Mounts easily, like so. Its job was to push this truck. It never failed. Every single time. Simple. Had a parent last year all concerned that the judges would rate motorized attachments higher than passive attachments. No, the judges like attachments that work. They love this one. Worked every time. Now you can get really complicated with attachments if you want to. You can have multi-purpose attachments, and later on when you want to, this is to be hands-on up here. So when you get a chance, you want to come up here and look at these attachments, please do, feel free. But you can get as complicated as you want to. You can have multi-directional attachments. As long as they work, that's what matters. That's all you want to know about an attachment. You can have sometimes an attachment that is passive with moving parts. Like this. The big thing is that it works. Now I recommend using a quick connect. You see I use these drop pins to fit into holes in the beams. Quick connect, attach and detach. You don't want to waste time in the launch area connecting pins together. Okay. The dog gear, and you can see this, that's this configuration here. I didn't dream that up. The kid did. Triangular fitting here, 3-pin here. Works like crazy. And the kid called it a dog gear. I have no idea why. Works like crazy. One of the things you want to watch out for, this has been a problem with some teams. I understand there's an easy solution. One kid has been doing all the programming on his computer. And then he gets sick, he gets a cold, goes to the dentist, he goes to his grandmother's, and you can't do anything because the program's on his computer. So make sure that it's in a shared file that everybody has in the computer. If you're using an EV3, make sure that you use a fully charged battery every time if you're using rechargeable batteries. Don't, if you're using replaceable double A's, triple A's, I think. Don't let the batteries run down and then all of a sudden the night before the tournament you put in fresh batteries, because you'll get an energy surge and the robot will operate differently. People ask me what spare parts to bring. All of them. Bring as many parts as you can. Leave them in your car if you have to. When in doubt, bring it. Bring extension cords. Bring power strips. Bring spare parts. Bring everything. If you don't need something, you can probably find a coach who'll loan you one, or maybe you'll be the coach who's loaning things out. Make sure that you have read the rules. Make sure the mission models that you are practicing are the ones that you're going to run into at the tournament. Sometimes something has to be this way, but you put it together this way at your practice. Then you get to the tournament and see it's this way, the way it's supposed to be. And you're out of luck. Practice so that you can make your transition, putting attachments on quickly and smoothly. Okay? You're going to want to make sure that if you have a motorized attachment, make sure that you're starting it consistently in the same place. So your kids will know what to do when they have to put something on, take something off while the clock is running. Practice good core values. Core values is a nice term. They use it. We talk about gracious professionalism and cooperation. To me, it's just courtesy and respect. Be courteous. Okay, this is not youth soccer where parents are screaming at officials. This is First Lego League. If you have an issue that needs to be discussed with the officials, let the kids go talk to the officials. Parents shouldn't need to talk to the officials. Let the kids do it. If you do need to talk to an official, which sometimes happens, they're nice guys, but they're volunteers. Treat them as such, be respectful, be courteous. If you need to reach out to me, I am not Mr. Programming Wizard. I cannot help you, even if I wanted to help you with programming. I cannot tell you how to solve a mission. But if you have a robot construction problem, or you have an attachment problem, you want to know how something works, call me up, send me an email. I get requests from people periodically. I'm happy to help you if I can. Okay?